Wonderful. All right, so we have quorum. We're opening then the meeting for the Ventura County Climate Emergency Council regular meeting scheduled today here on Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. And we are from the Atlantic Conference Room at the Hall of Administration, Main Plaza, County of Ventura office. We are recording this meeting, and as we call this meeting to order, let's go ahead and have a roll call, please. And introductions from our newest member.
Vice Chair White,
I'm here.
Councilmember Syed,
I'm here.
Chair Stop,
Here.
Councilmember DeJoy,
Here.
Councilmember Wayne Rostro,
Here.
Councilmember Corella, Councilmember Keith Gorola,
Here.
Councilmember Para, Councilmember Camarillo, and Councilmember Pro.
Here.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Crowe, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Good to meet everybody. I'm Eric Crowe. This is my first day on the job, so good to be here. Originally from Sacramento, started off as a civil engineer, commercial construction guy. In 2006, I had an opportunity to move to Alaska and was up there for 6 years, worked in the Arctic Circle for a service company. It was pretty cool. Was able to rotate 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, so I got quite a bit of time to travel and playtime, so that was pretty fun. I met my wife up there in Alaska. We moved to, well, she wanted to move. She wanted out of Alaska, so we moved to Long Beach. We spent 5 years in Long Beach. Somewhere around 2014, moved out to Ventura County. We've been here ever since. Started a family, got 3 small kids, all under the age of 8. Been in oil and gas for the last 15 years in multiple roles from the field to management. So I'm excited to be here and look forward to working with everybody.
All right, welcome.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and then go to item number 4, the oath of office, and that would be for Eric.
Sure.
So,
Yep, there you go.
sorry. That's okay.
I've got,
All right, so I believe Mia Martinez is here to administer the oath of office, and so the camera is right there, and
If you just stand right there, raise your hand and just repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Eric Crowe,
Do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend
do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Welcome aboard.
And with Councilmember Camarillo absent, we will be administering his oath of office at the next meeting. So let's move on to item number 5, which is the approval of minutes from our March 21st, 2023 Climate Emergency Council meeting.
Item number
Oh,
3.
sorry, item number 3, Pledge of Allegiance. How did I mess that up? Okay, so let's go. Thank you very much. Let's go to the Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilmember Syed, would you lead us in the pledge?
I need some.
Oh, you need, okay. Councilmember Corolla, do you want to
Sure.
help us?
Hand over your heart. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Councilmember Said, we'll throw you next.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we are on to item number 5, the approval of minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
Also move.
Is there a second? Okay, there's been a motion and second, and let's go ahead and have a roll call, please.
Vice Chair White,
Yes.
Councilmember Syed,
Yes.
Chair Munoz Snow,
Yes.
Councilmember DeTore,
Aye.
Councilmember Dwayne Wilstro,
Yes.
Councilmember Torella, Councilmember Gorola.
Aye.
Councilmember Para, Councilmember Camarillo, and Councilmember Crowe.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, so we are at item number 6, public comments for items not on the agenda. And I do understand that there is somebody online that would like to have their public comment be heard. That is Christian. Is he on the line? Okay, so Christian, we'll start with you, and then anyone else who's either here in the audience, you can stand up as well after him, and or anyone on screen if you want to raise your hand or take yourself off of mute. So we'll go ahead and start with Christian. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christian Nunez. I'm a policy advocate with CAUSE, an environmental justice organization that works with disadvantaged communities in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties who are on the front lines of polluting industry. In addition to representing an EJ organization, I am also a Ventura resident who was directly impacted by important decisions this Climate Emergency Council makes, which in turn affects how climate emergency and response policies are implemented in the county of Ventura. One of these decisions has clearly raised concern due to the fact that this Climate Emergency Council has now 2 new board members who are very much involved with the fossil fuel industry in this county. Currently, our local communities are plagued by a heavy polluting industry that contributes to greenhouse gas emissions and contamination in our local neighborhoods, schools, jobs, and environmental health. If this council is serious about incorporating meaningful climate change related policies and programs to better our communities in Ventura County, I believe that this council should scrutinize and reflect on their decision to onboard individuals who represent corporations like SoCalGas, who are huge contributors to the climate emergency our region is experiencing. I urge you all to re-examine your membership bylaws, which say that 2 additional at-large members will have demonstrated special interest, competence, experience, or knowledge in climate action planning. These requirements, in context to improving the health of our local environment, contradict the experience that these new members bring to the Climate Emergency Council. Their past experience and work highlight efforts to keep the fossil fuel industry in existence for the foreseeable future in our local communities. It is important for this Climate Emergency Council to reflect on their goals of bringing down greenhouse gas emissions down by 41% by the year of 2030. We are running out of time, and the decision to onboard individuals who are associated with the fossil fuel industry in our own communities to solve this crisis seems counterproductive and disappointing to say the least. Thank you.
Here in the public who would like to speak on items not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none here in the public, let's go ahead and go to those that are on screen. Anyone who is calling in would like to make a public comment at this time? You can take yourself off of mute and or raise your hand. And so I don't see anyone who's done either. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on then to correspondence agenda. So items number 7 and 8, correspondence from Vice Chair White at different times. And it's just presented to us as information only.
I can comment on it. This was referred to me by Dick Baldwin, who used to be a member of the Climate Emergency Council. He quit because he was frustrated with what was happening here, but he forwarded it to me and asked that I see if I could get it sent to everybody. It comes from TNC. It's a little pamphlet. The TNC is the Nature Conservancy, a pamphlet on climate change, and just good information and recommended by Dick.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to our regular agenda. starting at item number 9. And that is, we are receiving a presentation on stormwater capture. And we have the Ventura County Watershed Protection staff here with us today.
Hello, Barney Ansel,
Welcome.
Deputy Director of Public Works and Watershed Protection. Got a presentation. The request came for a presentation on stormwater capture and storage in Ventura County. And I'm going to give you a really high-level overview of what we're doing in Public Works from just one perspective of stormwater capture. Really just what watershed protection is doing. Now, stormwater capture or diversions from rivers are happening all over the county. The big one, Los Robles diversion that feeds Casitas. United Water diverts from Santa Clara River and recharges groundwater there. Pleasant Valley Water District pulls water off of Cayuga Creek. So there's some big water districts, water purveyors that are doing some large scale things. I'm going to talk about what Ventura County Public Works is doing, what our agencies are doing. So next slide. Thanks. And what the drivers are behind what we're doing is really a state regulation to clean stormwater before it gets into creeks. And so I'm going to go over our stormwater permit. We've got a new one a couple of years ago with some new plans I'm going to hit on, and then just go through some of the projects we have. Pretty high level. There's Green Street retrofits, pervious concrete, some bigger diversions into spreading grounds and bioswales, and some of the future concepts what we're thinking about as well, and touch on the groundwater sustainability agencies. Let me just pause there for a sec. So Ventura County gets 2/3 of its water from groundwater, local supplies. Some watersheds, like Ventura watershed, 100% dependent on local supplies. Imported water really only comes in the East County, Councilman, Simi Valley, Camarillo, some of Oxnard. But even those areas, not so much Thousand Oaks and Simi Valley, but Oxnard, Camarillo, Moore Park, really dependent on local supplies. And most of that's groundwater. So the groundwater sustainability agencies have been required to identify what is the sustainable yield from those groundwater basins and make sure that the demand on them is done sustainably over time, over periods of drought and heavy rain within, I think it's 20 years. 2040 is when they have to start meeting those demands. So those agencies are going to be doing a lot more projects for capture and getting water into groundwater. That's just a teaser. You probably want to have me back for that. Let's go to the next slide. So on our municipal permit, first one came out in municipal stormwater permit. That's the MS4, municipal storm separate sewer system. First one came out in '92. It was very simple. I think the whole thing was about 20 pages long, and it just said you'd have to inspect business, street sweep to get dirt off, have some programs to improve the quality of water coming out of your storm drains. New permits that came in after that over and over kept ratcheting down the requirements. It's becoming very expensive for us to comply with. And our last permit was just a couple of years ago that incorporated the TMDLs, total maximum daily loads. Now that's the amount of pollutants a receiving water can accept and still meet its beneficial uses, which are recreation, fishing, and even sometimes drinking water supply. And there's also a statewide trash requirements. So meeting these requirements means we have to treat the water some way. And the most effective way to do that is to capture it and soak it into the ground, because then it's not going to the receiving waters. Next slide. So here's some examples. Like I was just saying, inspections, some outreach, teaching people how not to pollute in their daily lives. That center picture I think is interesting. It's I think it's a brand name Filterra unit, but it's really a tree planted in a curb cut where dry weather runoff would go water that tree. It doesn't get to the receiving water. And I think for Climate Action Committee, Crisis Committee, that trees are important. So that's why I put that one there. But there are challenges with all of these, and I'll go into that. Next slide. So the watershed management programs are what we have to do now in our new permit, which is to identify, we know what the receiving water quality should be. We can identify the pollutants coming from the urbanized areas, see that if there are pollutants, then we got to identify what are the efforts needed to remove those pollutants And how do we do it in time to meet the deadlines that the state has set for us? So that's going to identify a lot of projects, a lot of efforts, programs as well, for us to be in compliance. And so a lot of what I'm going to show you, the projects of water capture, really come out of these regulations. Next slide. Okay, here's an example of stormwater capture that can replenish groundwater. So it drains off the street, goes into a diversion structure. It has to be pre-treated for trash and sediment because the filter area is always going to clog. There's always going to be sediment clogging that up, and the trash is going to be a problem. What's not shown here is there's probably a manhole above there to show so we can clean all that out. And what's important about this slide is as it filters through any underground infiltration gallery, or even if it's on the surface in a bioswale, the layer it's going to go to is the surface first layer of the aquifer. Generally a perched aquifer, mostly in Ventura County, that's a poor water quality. It's not a water source for many mutual water districts or cities. If this slide went down like another 5 feet, that's where a well would go down, and the deeper aquifers are where we would be pulling water from. But that surface, that first water aquifer, it may be poor quality water now, but 20 years from now, 40 years from now, that might be wet water that people are looking at because water is going to be that important. It already is. Next slide. Oh, there's another picture of a tree. That first one was better. But we put these up in Malibu Creek watershed, and want to let you know some of the challenges. A neighborhood that hires a lot of gardeners. Gardeners are paid to keep their lawns green. If their priority is to keep their job and not keep this tree alive, so they tend to overwater a lot. And these trees, you can't keep them alive because there's just too much water coming down the storm during dry weather. Next slide. Okay, now we're getting into the projects. This is our government center. It's an aerial map on the right. We have installed 39 acres of impervious surface. Actually, I think it's kind of misleading. We've installed impervious gutters that allow the water to soak in off the parking lot before it gets to the storm drain. So we're treating 39 acres of land. And it's a little difficult to see in this picture, but you can see the water getting to the curb or to the gutter, but it doesn't get all the way to the drain at the end of the picture. So next slide. This is during construction. So it's not just a thin layer of impervious concrete. It's a deep trench of gravel to capture all that stormwater. There are dry wells that go down, I think, 15 feet, and this is all really due to one of the challenges we have around the county is the soils. The soils are dense clay. The water's not going to go through, so we need to have some way to get it down a little deeper. So next slide. Here's a graphic kind of looking through the earth from the parking lot, where you can see the dry wells, how they would be getting the water deeper below a clay layer. And when you're leaving today, you'll probably notice the pervious concrete. It's different color. It's not asphalt. It's kind of like a Rice Krispie treat that's right there on the curb. Okay, next slide. We did this also in El Rio on several streets. El Rio area had a very difficult flooding issue during storms. So this pervious concrete helps, one, put water into, this actually is a good area to store water underground. It gets water off the streets, solves some of the flooding issues, and helps with the water quality here actually, because they have a nitrate issue. There used to be, well, it's past farming for one, and also they used to be on septic tanks. So and because of the ground there is very pervious to water, those pollutants travel a little faster than they do in other areas. So this is an example of how these types of projects are win-win-win. You know, they support multi-benefit things almost all the time. They are challenging. Keeping that concrete clean enough so it stays pervious is a big challenge. We just purchased a special vacuum system that steam jets into the concrete to remove debris. It's basically like a high-powered carpet cleaner for the concrete. And little accidents can cause big problems on these things. I don't mean car accidents, but somebody doing earthwork and just lets a lot of mud get into it could be a problem. Next slide. sorry, I don't really know what the next slide's gonna be every time, so well, it's exciting. This is an aerial view of the El Rio area to give you a sense of scale, of how many curb miles we've done. Okay, what's next? This is the bioswale up in the Ojai area. Similar to pervious concrete, you take the water out of the gutter, flow it through the bioswale where the ground is softer and more permeable, let the pollutant soak in. Here, we work with OVLC land because watering that land was good for them for one of their areas, but there's too much water. It's too big of an area to capture it all and soak it in. So it actually has a return back to the storm drain system that gets it to Ventura River. But the point here is the low flows definitely cleaned up and go into the ground. A good chunk of the higher flows do, but for flood protection, for life and property, it's still built to let the big flows go through. Next slide. Oh, this is a big project in Piru area. This one, in cooperation with United Water Conservation District, they had a spreading ground where they used to divert water from Piru Creek to soak it in to help fill up the Piru groundwater basin. They abandoned it for a few years, and I can't remember the reason why, but it turned out to be a great opportunity for a stormwater pollution prevention project where we can divert all the runoff from that community there into those existing spreading grounds. But there are still, we got to get all the trash out before it goes out into that area. And we had some challenges, with the easements to get water from a larger area. If you're familiar with Piru, those hills, the open space there are just sandy sugar hills. And when it rains, there's a lot of sediment coming through. So there's problems with maintaining any kind of infrastructure once you put it in the ground. Next slide. A little more detail on Piru. This one, we were very fortunate. Use the existing storm drain system. The land was already there. We're getting 36 urbanized acres. We're capturing, this is on average about 17 acre feet a year. This was a big year. I think we're closer to 40 acre feet this year. But in small years, it can hardly get anything. And that water in that basin, that recharge basin, does directly recharge the Piru groundwater basin, which is one of the basins that has to have a groundwater sustainability agency. They're considered overdraft by the state. Oh yeah, and the challenge is because fish passage is a big deal on the Santa Clara River, we wanted to make sure that we weren't pulling off too much water at critical times, so that the fish would always have an ability to move. I mentioned the easements and trash and sediment issues already. Next slide. This one is under construction right now. It's at the 118 where it crosses the Santa Clara River. If you're familiar with the Ventura County's Satakoy operations yard, we're right next to that. And Fence Factory is there. Caltrans, they're under a different permit. And so they reached out to us and said, hey, we have this land and we're willing to build something for you to capture water before it goes to the Santa Clara River. It's going to capture water from that urbanized area in red if we take on the long-term maintenance. And so, but we get credit for permit compliance by doing this. So we both get credit. They put in the heavy upfront investment, and we get to continue maintaining it. Similar problems doing just a simple project like this. Access to get a Vector truck or truck to clean the unit after it's there is really hard from the 118. That's a busy street and the trucks are big and there's no turnaround. So we're working on an easement there. But this is just another great example of how our staff has been able to find solutions in difficult little areas and to partner with other agencies. Next slide. So this is what it's going to look like. Actually, it might look like this now. I haven't been out there. They're under construction, but it's an underground storage area. So these chambers are going to be built underground to fill up with water. It's the storage aspect, and then it's going to filter in. So it's going to be able to capture all the water, and that's the problem with rain, especially in Ventura County. It just all comes at once, just 2-3 weeks a year, except for a year like this. So we got to capture it when it's there, but water, uncompressible liquid, it's going to take up the space it takes up. So that's how they're building around that. Next slide, yeah. Okay, so those were all permit driven. Those are water quality driven. This one is way up above Ojai in San Antonio Creek, pretty much above all the farms as well. And it's the San Antonio Creek spreading grounds. And what this picture is showing is you're looking downstream on a creek. On the left, that big concrete box with looks like metal, that's a real fine screen. And when the flows get high enough, they start spilling over into that box and get diverted to spreading grounds to recharge groundwater. A lot of challenges with this. Yeah, let's see what's on the next slide. There it is with some water flowing and some maintenance going on. And obviously people, for a sense of scale, it's pretty big. Challenges with this have been numerous, mostly because the original design was going to be passive. Water would get high enough and it just starts spilling in. But then for fish passage, they wanted to make sure we weren't getting the water before the fish could cross at Grand Avenue down below where a bridge was, and there could have been a problem. So we had to put a sensor, a flow meter down at Grand Avenue to trigger this to open up. So all of a sudden it went from just a passive device to something that has to have meter, telemetry, and valves to open it up. And then the screen was required, which wasn't part of the original design, to make sure we don't pull any fish into it, because to protect the biology there. And then there was a concern that small fish might get pinned against the screen by the water pouring in. So we have to have some jets spraying water to clean the screen and keep the fish off, bounce them off as they get stuck. And the plan was to use the water spilling in to clean it out, but there's so much sediment in the water, all the little jets kept getting clogged. So now we're trying to get either a fresh source of water or some bubblers, air jets to clean it up. I wish it's just been moving goalposts. If we knew what we had to get into to build this the very first go, it would have been designed differently. But it did just get tested for the first time this year. We actually did divert some water to the spreading grounds. And I think I got some pictures of the infrastructure there. So it's large. That's the pipeline moving the water from that diversion to the spreading grounds. Again, a person chart for scale. Next slide.
How much water did you get this year?
Yeah, we got 2 acre-feet. It was a small test. We have a water right to divert 900 acre-feet, which is not an insignificant amount of water for that basin. Ojai Basin right now, they pull out about 5,000 acre-feet a year. So close to 1,000 acre-feet is a lot of water for them. So yeah, these are just pictures to show the scale and how far away the actual spreading grounds are. Yeah, one more. And the spreading grounds themselves are a series of ponds. Which way does this go? I think the water comes in from the bottom of your screen, and the ponds are both to allow surface area for it to soak in, but also for silt to settle out. So the last pond that has the most infiltration. And at the end there is if the flows are too high, we want to avoid flooding. So it spills back into the creek. You can see the creek on the left side of the screen. Okay, so those are all actual projects. The Caltrans ones under construction. Now the rest of them are all already built. We have a couple other projects that we're studying, and I'll go through some of the challenge what we're getting tripped up on there. And then we also have these storm drain diversion feasibility studies, and that is really during dry weather, there shouldn't be any water in the gutters, right? It should be dry. If there's water going in, somebody's wasting water and somebody's transporting pollutants to the stream. And that's real hard behavior to change. So what we're looking to do in many areas is to divert water from the storm drain system before it goes to the creek to a wastewater treatment plant where it can be recycled now that there's much more water reclamation happening in the county. And one thing we've learned, we tried to approach wastewater treatment, but we did approach wastewater treatment plants 10 years ago and they weren't very interested. 4 years of drought and water conservation and low flow fixtures has changed that. Now they need more water because their plant is built for a larger scale. So they're much more interested in the water. Plus, there's revenue when they sell recycled water. So if they get the water, it's good for them. We're good because we're, doing the right thing to keep pollutants out of the creek. So these are feasibility studies. Where are the locations in the storm drain system that's close enough to the wastewater collection system that we can make that move? And do we need any treatment before it goes to wastewater? Does it need to be pumped? That's what we're looking at right now. Right now, we're focused in these areas of the county, Oak Park, Silver Strand, and the Ventura River watershed, mostly because of the TMDL specific. And everything. Yeah, what's next? So these are the projects. We got a grant to look at the possibility of doing stormwater capture projects. One at Saticoy Park, that's unincorporated county up in Saticoy. Little blue square at the top of the screen. Santa Clara River cutting diagonally there. And one in El Rio, down at the bottom of the screen. And what we found, the idea was to do the same with the other projects, capture water, get it to an area, soak it in the ground. If it's a park, possibly you could just, it's might be flooded for a week, a year, or do the underground chambers and capture it and let it soak in. Or under a parking lot, whatever, or work with a school if they're going to rebuild their baseball fields. Do it with the underground storage underneath there. What we found is on the east side of the river, that's where the soils and gravels are really good. It goes straight to the Fox Canyon aquifer. It's amazingly poor soil there. It goes fast. You can put as much water as you want there, and that's what United does. Their basins are up at the top of the screen when they divert off the Santa Clara River. On the west side of the river, up at Saticoy Park, just clay. No water's going anywhere. So it really made the feasibility of that project a lot less. Next slide. Saticoy, okay. A little just kind of close in on where we are in Saticoy and the opportunity there. Again, it's much what I said, but we're just to capture stormwater, recharge groundwater, support the minimize localized flooding. And we're collaborating with the county's Parks and Recreation Department, GSA, or County General Service Agency, and they've been really helpful. It's just that the soils and the condition in the park haven't been helpful. I think my next slide shows some of that. So the idea is to treat 159 acres, but let's go one more slide. I think I have these are the challenges we had. Low infiltration rates, it's very expensive. There's already high groundwater. That's something I didn't mention. You can't store water in the ground if there's already water there. And that's something we found at the San Antonio spreading grounds this year. By the time there's enough water in the creek to start diverting, there was already water in our wells in the injection wells. And it was, so if we get it early in the year, the first flows, there's space. But if we wait till after a few storms, the more storms we wait, the more water there's there, and there's no place to put it. So it wasn't feasible because of the confined layers of no confined layers of sand. It was clay. It was impermeable, and but it doesn't show it here. Maybe the next slide we'll see it. We had utilities issues. Back one. We don't even know what that picture's of. There is a drinking water line that cuts right underneath the whole park. So we can't dig it all out without rerouting some major infrastructure. And so the costs just keep going up and up and up. What looks easy on the surface, once you know what the soils are, once you know the utilities underground, it just could kill a whole project. So we redesigned it. That's what this next slide is. For a detention chamber with geohydraulic infiltration tubing under the baseball field, basically a leach field, like a septic system would have. So capture the water and then let it leach out slowly over time. But it would require also, because we can't capture and treat all the water, some of it would have to spill back out, and there's a bacteria TMDL from the Santa Clara River to protect the beneficial use of swimming. So we'd have to treat it either with UV or some other system. And so it would capture 57 acres. but we'd only be able to save and store 26 acre feet, I should say, acre feet a year. And again, the trash and pre-treatment's always needed. But it was nice to work with county parks. They were willing to work with us. And they still are. It's just this one's not looking too feasible. Next slide. Oh, there we go. That's what it would look like. And this isn't showing the water line that has to be moved. I thought that it might have. But you have underground filtration in the park, but still with a spill out to the storm drain system.
Was there a reason to choose then the park with proximity to something, to like to the storage capability, and is this like a beta test that would then be put other places like it?
Yes, on both counts.
Okay.
We just assumed the soils would be good here because the soils in the area are very good. So there was that, but we're really also limited to the real estate we have any kind of control over as the county, right? We'd have to, even this, we'd have to cooperate with Parks and Rec. We don't have the ability to say, hey, you've got to put this here. The other ones with school districts, we have to cooperate with school districts if we want them. The cities, especially on the east side of the county, have that same challenge. Camarillo, Thousand Oaks, Simi Valley, they don't own the parks in their city. That's a separate Parks and Recreation district. So it's the regulators, the regional board, they just say, look, you got all these parks, you just make it happen. But they don't always see all these steps, and especially they don't see the soil pipes and the underground utilities and all the other challenges we face. Next slide. That's got to be. Well, that's what it would look like. More pictures of underground chambers. The things you don't see once it's all covered up with lawn.
Are those the devices that we saw earlier flipped the other way, or is that a different structure?
It's the same type of chamber.
Okay,
This looks like it's complete storage because that doesn't look permeable underneath
No.
it. That looks like concrete. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is what we probably have to do there because of the soils aren't good. Yeah. Okay. What's the next one? I can't see the top. I don't know what it is. I think this is the El Rio School where very expensive. I gotta confess, I'm not giving you costs on a lot of these projects. I'm not giving you the actual volume of water captured on any of them. I can come back to you with a lot of those answers. But this is when we were trying to cooperate with El Rio School and doing a feasibility study of what it would look like to capture water there. They want to rebuild their park. And it's an opportunity. If you're going to tear all that out, that time the park's going to be closed. That's an opportunity for us to get in there and do it. But we don't have $19 million to do a project like this and rebuild a school park. So this was just a study. How can we get it done? Or how can we prepare ourselves for a grant application when it comes along? How do we get shovel ready? All right, next slide. So you can see the school in the center there. That's where the pervious gutter I showed 10 slides back, but it would capture an awful lot of water from the El Rio area, and that should have better soils.
A quick question.
Yeah.
The O&M on there for 123,000, what does that entail? Is that cleaning out all of those
Yeah.
sediments annually?
Generally, there'll be a tree treatment, a continuous deflective device, a CDS, it spins around, so all the trash just gets stuck at the bottom, and the water gets spun off to the side. It's just getting a gigantic vacuum like they use for the sewer lines, pull all that out and dispose of it appropriately. That's most of it. I think every 5-10 years, you got to get what's in there. I think sediments get by. So again, we're doing a feasibility study, looking to how we can build a project here if we ever get the funding for it. So next slide. So this one would have high. Oh, thanks. There we go. High construction and maintenance costs. It wasn't another one of the perfect, Goldilocks projects. Uh-oh. I think he's pretty close to done.
Well, you all look like you're still there.
Okay, should be good. I'm back, okay. So again, it's just not a Goldilocks project. It's nice that the school district's willing to work with us, the community, we've met with the community MAC here and at Saticoy. Really engaged groups, both of them, it was nice. So what's the next slide? There we go. Too far? No, that's fine. Okay, they have the same flooding issues. So if this project were to go through, it would support them if those flooding issues and capture water and be groundwater recharge. Let's see where we're going from here. I'm at 34 slides. I'm pretty sure I'm almost done. Yeah, okay, this is just more maps of the same project. More details. I'm sorry, I stole all these from our manager who gave the presentation at the MAC. I would have her do this, but she quit. So she's in a better place now. Sorry. So one more. Let's go. I think I'm getting close to wrapping it up. So cheaper, $9 million. We don't have $9 million, so we need to get a loan. O&M's a little cheaper too. So this one is good. We just need $9 million and work with the school when they finally plan to rebuild their park. Okay, let's wrap this up. So I just want to touch on the partners. So we did work with United Water. We worked with school districts, park districts, water agencies. Anybody who sells water, water is valuable. So diverting to wastewater treatment plants for water agencies, groundwater sustainability agencies, they need projects for more water. They need water. There's big cuts coming in Ventura County in 20 years. So we shouldn't think of the stormwater capture in kind of the silos we are, where we're trying to solve one problem. We're trying to solve stormwater pollution. We need to think of it in that grander scale. The water has value to everybody. So how do we get these conversations going better and in the future is something to be thinking about. And next slide, we done? Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay, yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Arn. So let's go to public comments if there are any questions or comments from the public. And so I'm going to ask those that are here in the room with us. No? All right. And we can go online. So you can take yourself off of mute or raise your hand. So I see Shelley. Is it Shelley Sussman? Yeah. Go ahead, Shelley.
Yeah, thanks. I work in planning at the County of Ventura. Arnie, did I see a slide that indicated that 95% of the water that you intend to cap or would hope to capture as part of that Saticoy project comes from the city?
No, yeah, you back up a bunch. No, I don't think so, but
Okay.
don't say that's a problem. I think the county, because the unincorporated portions of the county are such a spider web of neighborhoods, we need to cooperate with the cities on projects because there's no separating the water when it's running on streets.
Yeah, it's just Saticoy Park is like the only recreational asset in direction that'd be tough, but
We lost you for a second.
Anyway, I was just saying Saticoy Park is the one recreational space that the community of Saticoy has. So if it's out of commission for a while, that would be tough for them.
Yes, we did meet with the Saticoy MAC back in, I'll say February, it wasn't that long ago, to let them know what we're looking at, right? We don't have a project on the books or funded yet, to let them know that there would be those challenges.
Thanks.
Thank you. And then I see Paulina Nava. Go ahead.
Yes, hello, my name is Paulina. I'm the Climate Change and Health Equity Coordinator with Ventura County Public Health. It's great to meet you all. Perhaps we can collaborate in the future. And thank you, Arnie, for your presentation. I have two small questions. The first one is, given the nature of this group, how do you or your office anticipates climate change or extreme precipitation will impact the work you all do? And are there any planning efforts in terms of adaptation or managing that? So how are we adapting according to climate change? And secondly, You listed potential collaborators. I was wondering if there's any collaboration efforts with environmental health or public health, or just the understanding of the burden of waterborne illnesses, especially in areas where there isn't the infrastructure. The infrastructure that's there is more conducive to pollution of the water supplies. Yeah, thank you again. So much helpful information.
Sure. So on the climate change, what we're learning, especially on the groundwater side, groundwater sustainability side, is that there's going to be fewer and more intense storms. So we're planning on a 50-year horizon. It doesn't look like there's going to be that much less annual percentage, but it's all going to come in shorter periods of time. So basically the scale, what we're designing for, has to be for bigger storms. What as far as cooperating and coordinating with environmental health and other county agencies, I should have been very clear on this. This permit, the stormwater permit that the regional board, the state board has given us, is a county permit. We are all responsible for the compliance of that permit. And so we have cooperations with GSA, and environmental health, especially vector control, because when we're dealing with these stormwater capture devices, there can be standing water. And they have been very helpful, but I'm glad you brought it up, that this is a countywide permit, and so they need to train their staff on like when they're cleaning streets or cleaning things, that the water they're using doesn't get away from them, especially if they're using pesticides or other things. There's a whole list of things that we have to make sure our staff is trained on. We have a team that nags them a lot to do that, but it's their responsibility for the compliance with the permit.
Okay. Thank you, Warren. Anyone else on calling in that would like to make a public comment? And Victor, I don't think we have anyone else. Okay, all right. So let's go to comments and questions from.
We did
yes.
get one more, Jan.
We do have one more.
Yes.
All right, Jan.
It's actually Ron Whitehurst is watching with me and has a question.
Okay, go ahead, Ron.
So runoff is based on the quality of the soil. So through the use of chemical fertilizers and such, most lawns shed water rather than allowing it to sink in. Was it Sierra Water Progressive had a really great proposal for the Miners Oaks area there near Ojai of working with individual residential homeowners to help them set up the berms and swales and such, so you could slow spread and sink the water into the ground where you can use it to grow plants, which will transpire water and reduce the local warming effect of the heat island effect of all this pavement that we have. So a distributed solution of looking at working with homeowners and encouraging them to take care of the soil that they've got control over, and making sure that most of the water that falls on their property sinks in and is usable for growing plants. There's several initiatives around the transition streets, kind of out of Transition USA, and was it Cool Blocks? Another initiative that was looked at in Santa Barbara for a bit, and then is implemented in
LA, City of Irvine, and Petaluma.
Petaluma, yeah. So those initiatives look at working with communities, on a household basis, working together
neighborhood basis.
Yeah, neighborhood basis, to implement these sustainability practices. And so it would be interesting. Let's see, there's somebody looking at it in the county.
I'm not sure. Community Environmental Council that has started the Climate Ambassador training program, and this could be on the agenda of the climate ambassadors to explore neighborhood outreach for this this type of learning?
So earlier wastewater, solid waste and wastewater looked at Our Water, a program called Our Water, Our World. And they developed some materials to encourage people to use organic methods for controlling their pests so that the solid waste and wastewater wouldn't be contaminated with pesticides. So this would be an extension of a program like that. So when you have a huge amount of runoff carrying a lot of trash and toxic chemicals that are used in lawns, that's a big problem. But if you work with different methods to incentivize and educate individual homeowners, then it becomes a doable project, on a community basis. So I encourage you to look at those community-based solutions.
Okay, thanks, Ron and Jan. Anyone else from the public? Not seeing it. All right, so seeing none, then let's go to council members' comments and questions. Yes.
I have a bunch.
Councilmember Del Toro.
Just first couple of clarifications. Did I hear correctly? 2/3 of our water is groundwater. Is that correct?
I did handed my slides in last night. I would put it in this morning. No, I'm joking. I joke. My presentations are never done until they actually take it away from me. I would have put a slide in showing that graph. Local supply. So Ventura has a lot of surface water too. And so I counted surface water in that 2/3.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I had that number right. So let me rephrase or phrase it differently. We're only purchasing 1/3 of our water.
Yeah.
Okay.
Importing.
Yeah. That's a better way. Sure. Okay. And then 2040, the permits. Is that the mandate date from Sacramento? Is 2040 a date that we have to be in compliance by?
Yeah, for the groundwater sustainability agencies of basins that were considered critically overdrafted, yes.
Okay.
The others, 2042, they get the next.
Oh, 2 years. Okay. And I think I already know the answer to this question, but I have to ask it. Is Sacramento providing any of the money to come into compliance with?
That's a great question. They are showering money on the groundwater people.
Okay.
Fox Canyon got $15 million in grants. So the other agencies are getting millions of dollars of grants to do the plans, to do conveyance systems, to move water around projects, study where to put projects. Stormwater is a completely different world. The stormwater quality, we don't get very much money at all.
Okay.
Highly competitive grants. And in fact, where stormwater is not considered a utility the way water and wastewater is. So we have a higher bar to raise rates, even if it's to protect the life and property from flooding or to comply with something like this. We have the Prop 218, you need 2/3 of the voters to increase rates, where a wastewater utility or a drinking water utility, you need 50% to deny it, to object.
Right.
So we're in a completely different funding world. And the county has a benefit assessment for NPDES compliance that got locked in 1996.
Okay.
Inflation has taken a huge bite of that, and the O&M of these projects. Every time you build something, it's a puppy you got to feed for 50 years. So
sure.
Funding is an issue for stormwater.
Okay. So we need Sacramento to start stepping up with more money.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question. The pervious versus the impervious. In theory.
Yeah.
Would it be practical or possible, like with all new construction coming into the county, like whether it's streets or whatever, to require that it be the pervious concrete and have those systems in place? Is that something that's practical, is rational?
In theory,
In theory?
you can do that. There's practicalities, especially with roads and truck loading and the engineering required for a road. But I should have mentioned new development and significant redevelopment, development of an acre or larger, has to treat the water that's coming off their property. So if you're building a big parking lot, you need to capture that water and at minimal treat it well enough to discharge it, but ideally capture it, soak it in. And that's where a lot of progress is going to be made over time. Generations to redevelop every lot to get them to do that.
Okay.
But the roads are a significant surface area. those rules don't apply to roads. It's more where we can because the constraints, the public right of way, it's really tight,
Sure,
and the safety factors in roads
okay.
as well.
Well, that line or that thought process about, over time and generational, I was interested when you showed like the athletic fields. Using that same thought process, is that something that where the ground, the soils would work? Is that something that possibly could happen? Because I think of like in Thousand Oaks, you have a huge soccer field area, Jan's and Moore Park, Arroyo Vista Park, and these different huge soccer fields or even golf courses or something like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Some of the same challenges apply if they have the right soils or getting the water to there. If you do you need to build a pump, use electricity to get the water there, they can get complicated really fast.
Okay, but in theory, it
yeah,
could be
absolutely.
possible. All right, very good. All right, thank you. That's what I had.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Yes. Councilmember Corolla.
Arnie, regarding hazardous material spills. Currently, if a spill occurs and gets into the drainage system, usually it's able to be cleaned up pretty readily, depending on what the project is and time duration and so forth. With the some of the systems that you indicated there, with where they collect the trash and so forth, will there be material in there they'll be able to hold and collect liquid types of hazardous materials, or is that going to be a little bit more complicated system?
That would be more complicated. They're not designed to capture hazardous materials. I don't think there's a shutoff valve in the designs. It's supposed to be stormwater off the parking lot for the most part. If there is a case like that, it would be very similar if it just went into the street storm drain as it is, and it's a straight shot to the river anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else with questions?
So are there any assessment like you can do like over the last 10 years, how much needle have you moved towards capture?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Haven't done it over the last 10 years, but our new permit in the water management planning approach that we're undergoing it's a modeling effort to show, well, you need to remove this amount of pollutants and you need to have these projects and street sweeping at this level to remove that amount of pollutants. And we're going to be revisiting that every 5 years using actual in-stream data to see what's the pollutant loading in the creeks and are we meeting that? Have the projects done what we thought they would? So we'll learn a lot in the next 5-10 years.
Okay. Councilmember.
I'm trying to wrap my brain around the scale of this. So I know that 2/3 is from groundwater, a third we purchased. What is Ventura County's usage annually in acre feet ballpark?
Boy, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought you mentioned in San Antonio that project captured 2 acre foot, but Ojai uses 5,000. So
We diverted 2 acre feet this year. We have a water right to 900 acre feet.
okay.
We've never pulled that much off the river. Wild guess. So the Fox Canyon. Sorry, I work with Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency also. That's the Oxnard Plain all the way up to Moore Park and Arroyo Santa Rosa. That whole area uses a little over 100,000 acre feet a year now. They shouldn't, they got to cut back. So wild guess countywide, probably 300-400 acre feet a year. I don't have that number, but
Is the demand?
100,000. What's that?
That's the demand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if I can look at it. I do have that number, but I don't even have my laptop with me.
Yeah, no, I think that paints a good enough picture. And then back to that 2040 mandate. Is that a goal from Sacramento? Like what percentage is captured?
That 2040 mandate was specifically for the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. So if the groundwater basin is pulling out more water than it's replenishing every year, I'm oversimplifying it, but that's they're considered an overdraft. That it's not sustainable. The water's just not going to be there over time. So they need to figure out how to balance what they're using with what's going in, and that could be by projects. It could be using like Lake Casitas as an alternate source and increasing the volume that goes to Lake Casitas. Just throwing out ideas here. so that they have enough storage to last through drought periods and high water years. So it's not year to year to year, it has to match, but they have to be sustainable by 2040.
And where are we in Ventura County right now? Are we overdrafted on this groundwater?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. In Ventura County, see if I can do this real quick. Mound Bay, or sorry, Ojai Basin, overdrafted. Upper Ventura River, overdrafted. Lower Ventura River, okay. Mound Basin, where we are right now, overdrafted. Santa Paula was adjudicated a long time ago, overdrafted. Fillmore Highway overdrafted. Oxnard Basin overdrafted. Las Posas overdrafted. And then when you get to East County, it's a different story. Arroyo Santa Rosa, they have a water quality problem. They're working on it. Simi Valley has high groundwater, so they don't have problems. It's really salty groundwater that nobody wants to use. And City of Thousand Oaks is up on the hill, volcanics. There's just no groundwater there at all.
awesome. All right, thank you.
Gives us a good picture. Yes.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Vice
A
Chair.
most interesting presentation, yeah, so good to hear what the county's doing on this. I have a question related to Public Works and its positions on climate change in general, and you're a deputy director, so you sit in the rooms with all the director and the other deputies, and just curious, you know, we're as a climate council interested in seeing that county is doing everything it can to address climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions wherever possible. And just curious whether what you see in the Public Works Department as the priorities on climate change. That's my question.
It's the fewer and stronger storms. Right? If we get a lot of storms that chew up our infrastructure, it's going to be a problem for everyone. Levees, that's just a physical impact of climate change. Sea level rise doesn't look to be as bad as we think for our infrastructure. The wastewater treatment plants are always right on the water, so they're at risk. If they have an ocean outfall, they're at risk. But it's also maintaining what we have is a big challenge. We have a lot of aged infrastructure, and so that do we maintain it in place, or do we get the funding and ability to rebuild it for a new plant? And then as far as greenhouse gas and drivers like that, we don't have a lot of pump stations and operations. We have a handful, but I don't think that they're at risk because they're down at the flat, wherever it's flat, and that's where flooding is, and that's why we have pumps. But I don't think that they are part of the climate change solution other than finding alternate energy sources. I'm going a little far afield for public works there. Did that answer your question?
Well, yes and no. You know, sea level rise is a resilience question, whether your facilities are resilient to sea level rise. What I'm most interested, I guess, is reducing greenhouse emissions in operations. For example, GSA and Public Works are in charge of buildings in Ventura County, not your division, understood. Right. And I just want to get a feel for whether addressing climate change is a priority in Public Works. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay, I see where you're going. No, it's more how are we gonna how's our infrastructure gonna survive and be there? It's not how are we gonna reduce our impact? That's from my level. I'm not hearing those conversations.
I would urge you that at your next meeting of the deputies and the director to mention this conversation, because we're looking for reductions in greenhouse gas emissions to meet the county's goals on climate change.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm just still getting my head around that one. From what we actually do, that's a little difference because there's a lot of ties. Dry weather runoff carries pollutants. Dry runoff, wastewater, moving water around the state is a huge energy consumption. So if we can just get people to stop doing that, it would be a huge drop in greenhouse gas. But changing behavior is difficult.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Yes.
I'm not sure if you know, how many wastewater treatment plants do we have in Ventura County?
In the county, well, we got 12 cities. It's probably the easiest way to be doing the math, but because the cities aren't really connected, right?
Gotcha.
Port Hueneme uses Oxnard's, but there's a small package plant up the coast too that the county operates in Piru, so say 14.
I know it's still it's still early stages, but there's concepts in place and actual practices where other wastewater treatment facilities are actually capturing some of that methane that is a byproduct of like their settling ponds. So instead of letting it vent in their open settling ponds, they're actually capturing it. They have to unfortunately clean it and process it, and then they're putting it into the pipeline. So it's not.
Right.
So that may be something that you could bring up.
Is that cogeneration? Yeah, there's some, we have a water and sanitation district in Public Works. So you might want to ask them to answer those questions.
Okay, any other questions? No, all right.
Looks like there was one in the chat, but I
There
don't
was,
know.
okay, so there is a comment in the chat.
Oh, upper lower basins, yeah, you got it. It's Foster Park. I think it might be a little lower. It might be where Ojai Valley Sanitation District is, or just call it Foster Bridge there. I'm not exactly sure, but you're very close.
Okay.
The Taylor Ranch Drive from Aggies, I heard is brackish. But yeah, and if it's in the lower river, lower aquifer, it probably is brackish, and that's why it's not overdrafted, because it's poor quality water and nobody really used it very much.
All right. Then I do have a question. So this comment came up at our last meeting of how much of the current or what we had at that point, which was a lot of rain, we met about a month ago. And so of that, were we able to bring in or like save a lot of that water that had come in through the rain? And so I don't know if you have any measurement or speculation.
Yeah, I'll speculate this way. All the projects I showed you helped. United Water Conservation District does it on a grand scale. And so their number probably, everything else would just be, lost in the noise. Because they have that massive Riemann diversion, pulling water right off the Santa Clara River and going into infiltration ponds. Lake Casitas is up 50 feet, and that's all water diverted from Ventura River up at the Los Robles diversion at Matilahan Dam. So between those two, you've got 99.9% of the water captured, I would think.
Okay.
And in East County, I mentioned Pleasant Valley Water District, they pull water out of Conejo Creek when it's available.
Yes.
Yeah, I just have, just to get my head around this, it seems pretty massive effort that all you are doing. I know in LA County, they have this Measure F, they get 300 million almost. So we don't have anything like that here. I mean, funding wise, it sounds like Ventura County doesn't spend that much money on.
We don't have that much money to spend.
Right, sure.
It's definitely something we're talking about. Compliance with the stormwater permit is expensive. I mean, there's a way to fund that. Obviously, the groundwater sustainability is important, and we need to fund that locally. Recreation parks and habitat restoration, all of that is the solutions that we're looking at for a lot of the stormwater problems and the groundwater problems also support habitat and recreation. Beach water quality for tourism, all of that needs to be packaged up and get the political will behind it to take it to the public for a vote.
I guess my question to understand for me is basically asphalt versus, a hardscape versus green space, right? Does Ventura County have less of a problem than Los Angeles County? Do we have less asphalt than hardscape? Versus?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
so
yeah, much less. I mean, we're a tenth the size of the population, but we're also scattered. Our populations are in little centers. So there's a lot of green space and open space between the communities.
So I guess, am I right to say that, assume or say that we don't have to worry about reducing the asphalt and hardscape as much? I mean, is that like, that's one of.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not going
I'm just speculating. I'm just trying to understand, because that's one of the biggest thing, from what I read in Los Angeles County, right? They're basically the main thing is trying to reduce the asphalt and hardscape and
Right.
increase the green space, which they haven't done a good job of,
Right.
but, so we don't have that much of an
Right.
issue here. And
We don't, but it also gives us challenges for compliance with stormwater, because if we were all concrete channels and all asphalt, the opportunities are everywhere, because anywhere you remove concrete and asphalt, you're gonna do better. But here, we have, we're so separated, and every little storm drain goes straight to the river, that you just got a small footprint to do any kind of improvement, and it's much more challenging for us.
so, sorry, like 80% of, for example, LA County water went into ocean. How much of, I know it's speculating,
Yeah.
how much of our water went into ocean when it rained?
A lot, and that's because the Chesapeake and Santa Clara River are massive. And so even if we can capture a ton of water off of that, enough for our needs, those are massive, that massive amount of water going to the ocean. And there's just no way to capture all that. We wouldn't know what to do with it.
So it sounds like some of the other players like United Water Conservation could possibly give us some numbers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Arn, for your wonderful
Thank you.
presentation.
All right,
We
thank you.
really appreciate your time.
I'm gonna sneak out the back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move on to item number 10. So we are receiving a presentation on the Resilient Central Coast Initiative. And that's from the Ecology Action Staff, and I believe,
Let me
Are they
just
on?
check to see if she's still around.
okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, everybody.
Hi there.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can, and hold on, we're having some challenges here with the transmission.
That message came up last time and it restarted, so if it does that, I want to make sure it does it for the presentation.
The Resilient Central Coast Campaign is a 6-county collaborative effort from Santa Cruz County all the way down to Ventura. And within that, each county has established their own milestones, what their goals for this project and within this project. But we also worked on one larger campaign goal for all of our 6 counties, which is to activate 500,000 residents on the Central Coast to cut their carbon emissions in half by 2030 and help them prepare for climate change impacts. So within that larger goal, each county has set what we call milestone goals. So an example is Ventura County is aiming to engage 250 households in the platform. It's just kind of kicked off in your county by June. And their efforts already, they've engaged about 1/4 of that, so a little over 60 households. And those households have saved over 12 tons of CO2, 399 therms, and 250 gallons of water as just some examples of some of the metrics that are captured on the platform, which I'll go into a little bit more in depth in a moment. So next slide. I think you skipped.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, there we go. So we have one central landing page for all 6 counties, which is this resilientcentralcoast.org. And on that landing page, residents can find resources, links to events and things in their areas related to climate change or workshops and informational webinars. And then they also will have access to each of the county's pages. And so Ventura's is here, climateresilientvc.org, and each county has their own specific landing page, which if you're a Ventura resident, you can go directly to that Ventura landing page and you sign yourself up onto the platform. And that way, the platform will know what types of resources to match to which resident, so that things are really specific to people. So go ahead to the next slide. So once a resident signs up on this platform, they'll see these action categories. So there's 7 action categories. And within those action categories, there's about 100 different actions people can take to, reduce consumption, save on carbon, things like that. And so these actions range from home electrification to emergency preparedness. There's transportation, there's being water wise, water conservation. And within the action categories, there are resources to help people actually achieve that action. And that's where things get kind of specific to your area. So an example would be if someone wanted to select an action category to like reduce their household waste as an example. If they chose that action category, depending on where they live, their waste hauler information would be within that action category, and they could see how much it would cost saving wise if they were going to drop a bin size. So that's just one example of how information is tailored within the platform to help people actually take actions. So go to the next slide, please. And then one of the other things about the platform is that on the back end, where we work with our city and county agency partners to actually put all the resources into the platform so that we can showcase specific programs, resources, incentives, rebates that you have locally that are available to residents. And so again, when a resident selects a certain action, say for home electrification, and they want to install an electric heat pump, if you happen to have an electric heat pump rebate in your city, that would be linked under that action for the person. So we're trying to put everything in one spot and make it as easy as possible for people to kind of make those updates. Go ahead to the next slide. One of the ways we're rolling the program out to the communities is through our team leader program. And that really the idea behind it is to sort of inspire and activate residents to be leaders within their own contacts. So neighborhood groups, church groups, civic groups, working with a number of youth to provide them with the tools they need to become leaders and lead teams. And these teams can be organized on the platform. So when you log on to the platform, you can just be a resident and just do it on your own, or you could join a team. And within the teams, you can compete and see how you're comparing with other teams in your community, have a little friendly competition. And we provide toolkits to our team leaders so they can do like monthly check-ins with their teams and just kind of encourage people to stay engaged with the platform. So part of the platform is that when you select an action to take and you complete that action and you log on and you actually log it as complete, that information generates into like what we call the carbon calculator. And so as a resident, you are able to see what your savings are, whether it's resource savings or financial savings for taking that action. And also that information is gathered by us on a monthly basis, and we share that out with our agency partners. And that information can be used for climate action plan metrics and things like that that you've set for residential savings. So one example is that the city of Santa Cruz actually wrote in the Resilient Central Coast platform to be a part of their climate action plan in a way that they are addressing their residential goals in numbers within that plan. And so they use the metrics and data directly from the platform to report on those numbers. Go to the next slide. So as always, it takes a village. There's over 24 partners that help make this program possible. And all of our partners have played a big role in piloting the platform and providing resources and connecting us with people in their community that can help highlight the program itself to residents, everything in between. So it's really an exciting collaborative effort here on the Central Coast to really push climate solutions. And it's been super exciting. And we've been working for about a year kind of on the back end, but a lot of the programs are just really starting to roll out in the last few months. So it'll be really, really exciting to see how those numbers are growing, especially through the spring and summer months. So go ahead to the next slide. So I'd love to pause there for any questions folks have. Again, this is kind of just like a brief overview, but I really encourage everyone to check out the platform resilientcentralcoast.org. And probably the best way to kind of understand how the platform itself works is to just log yourself on and take a look and go through the platform and get a feel for what those actions are and how people are engaging with it. So yeah, thank you again for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the public? So any questions from those that are here in the room? Seeing none, let's go to then those on screen.
No hands raised.
So you can raise your hand. All right, so we have Jan. Go ahead, Jan.
I'm just eager to have a blurb to put in our 350 Climate Hub newsletter, and I know about 6 other organizations that would probably push it out. If you have something ready made, Emily.
Yeah, we absolutely do. If you want to either email me at this email address here, resilientcentralcoast@ecoact.org, or you can put your email in the chat and I can email you directly. But that would be great, Jen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We also have some write-ups that we can share.
Okay, and so Heather mentioned that we have a few things that we could share as well. Okay, great. Any others on public comments? All right, seeing none, then let's go to the council members. If you have, does anybody have any comments or questions for Emily?
Got just one question.
Yes, go ahead, council member.
Emily, did any lesson learned from your guys' initial kickoff on how to push this platform out to the public and get them using it?
I would say there was quite a bit of lessons learned. I think, we spent so much time sort of piloting the platform and going through a number of updates on the platform, getting it to where we wanted it to be a lot more specific to our counties themselves. And so we took a lot of time to do that part of it, of the rollout. And we were so excited about it. And then we kind of realized we got to the end of year 1 and we'd spent so much time like improving the platform itself. We hadn't really done the community engagement side of it, right? So this year we're looking forward to actually going out to the community and bringing the platform to the community and really seeing the impact of it once residents are actually engaged with it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council members? No? All right. Anything else you'd like to share, Emily?
No, I just want to thank you guys so much for your time. We've really enjoyed our partnership with County of Ventura and are so excited that this program is rolling out in your region, and we look forward to supporting those efforts.
Okay. And then I do have a comment though, is that for staff. So last year, one of the projects that we had adopted was this public relations program. So is this part of then that whole outreach to the community is working with.
So let me come to the front. I was gonna.
Yeah, go ahead, Alejandra. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Alejandra with the CS office. Yeah, so this is part of it. So how Emily mentioned, we're just kind of kicking off now. I think our press release is going out today, maybe tomorrow, just to do a kickoff of this brand new website. So it's part of that, just public outreach, trying to be out there doing more with our programs.
Okay.
So this is our one element that is kind of like a platform to kind of get engaged with the specific activities. So yes, it's finally rolling out.
Wonderful.
This is one of the elements of it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Emily.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Comment?
Yeah, this is a
Go
really
ahead.
good thing you're doing. Keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Bye. All right. Very good. So then let's go on to item number 11, to receive an update from the county executive office staff. And who will be handling that?
We can jump off Heather.
Okay.
But, it was just kind of like an update of all the events and kind of what we were doing. So just, we'll take any questions if you had from the update, or if you want us to expand on anything that was attached to that agenda.
Was there anything that council members had any questions on? Was part of the agenda?
I do. What's happening here at the government center?
For all the
Earth Day.
Yeah, so we have a great exhibit of posters down the hall if you want to take a walk down there and kind of see those that we borrowed from Ojai. We have a Earth Day next Friday.
This Friday.
This Friday,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we had a Earth Day event in Thousand Oaks last weekend. We have one in Fillmore this weekend. We have one in Oxnard on Thursday. So there's a lot of events going on throughout the county, but here in the facility for employees, we have an Earth Day tour. We have an exhibit of posters out there, and then we have there's several different activities so they learn more about what to do for different elements of Earth Day. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from council members? No? No? Okay. All right, and any comments from the general public? Comments or questions? So you can raise your hand. Take yourself off mute. All right, so seeing none, let's move on then to the next item. Item number 12 is to receive an update on purpose and authority of the Ventura County Climate Emergency Council. And so we'll have an update then from staff.
Yeah, Heather, you want me to start and then?
So the agenda packet has an overview of the update and purpose of the authority of the Climate Emergency Council, and it kind of goes through the history of the climate action plan that's incorporated throughout the general plan, and it highlights some of the programs and policies, and also provides links to the bylaws. So basically, the Climate Emergency Council was established to execute back in October 2020 to advise the board on climate action planning and implementation of CAP goals, policies, and programs. There's about 27 kind of topics that don't have a lot of implementation programs that could be programs identified by the Climate Emergency Council. And so basically it's all towards the goal of our 2030, 2040, and 2050 GHG reduction targets and goals. And those are listed, the 40% by 2030 or 41%. And then the 2050 or 2040 and 2050 goals. And then they also give a highlight about what's the proposals that have been presented to the Board of Supervisors to date. They were presented last September 20th. And it talks about the board direction as well as highlights the Planning Commission recommendations. And then on June 1st of this year, I can send out a save the date. We will be taking the remaining 2 proposals to the Planning Commission for their recommendations, and then the Planning Commission and the Emergency Council's recommendations will be presented to the Board of Supervisors at a later date. That's a lot of information. We can answer any questions or go into more details.
So why we had asked the county staff to do this is, because we have some new members that have just joined us. So it was really more of an overview of why we're here and what our goals are then, and how we, once we come up with those recommendations to the board and pass them here, goes to the planning commission and then to the board of supervisors. So there's a couple of steps that we must take first, but just giving you a broader overview of why we're here. Any comments or questions for the staff?
I'll make a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Vice Chair.
Well, I have a different summary of why we are here, what our purpose is. Having been here, the three of us here at this end of the table have been here for a couple of years now. And the rest of you are new. And in the time that we've been here, I was just counting on my fingers how many supervisors there have been in Ventura County. When we first started, there were 5, and some have left and one died and have been replaced. And I think the total is 12 supervisors that have been in office since this climate emergency council's been formulated. And I've talked to 10 of the 12. I haven't met Supervisor Gorell or Parvin, but I have spoken with the other 10. And my feeling in my conversations with the 10 are that they're looking for recommendations from this council on what the Board of Supervisors should be doing to address climate change. And there are no limitations on the kinds of advice that we might give them. And I'll just read again, Heather read it, but I'll read it again. From the bylaws, the purpose of the VCCEC is to advise the board on climate action planning and implementation of the CAP's goals, policies, and programs. And I think that encapsulates what we're supposed to be doing. In 2 years, 24 months, a little more than 24 months, the CEC has come up with 6 actions, some of which are summarized in the document presented in our agenda here. They include a recommendation that the Board of Supervisors adopt a resolution on capping abandoned oil wells. A recommendation for the county establishing a policy to electrify its buildings and facilities where feasible. Proposed program that would encourage the retrofit electrification of existing buildings, both residential and non-residential. And the 2 building related items are yet to get to the board, even though they were done more than half a year ago, adopted by this group. The 4th thing is just a question of landscape equipment inventory for Ventura County landscape operations, which are done by GSA. An educational program, which was talked about earlier. And then a question on the county's implementation of a previous board action suggesting that all the vehicles that the county acquires should be electric vehicles. So those are the 6 actions that this council has taken over the years, over the last 2 years. And we certainly could do more. I look at the list on page 2 of this item where kind of interesting, and when the general plan was adopted, there was this list of possible programs and policies that could be implemented, and asking the CEC to evaluate and perhaps recommend them. And we've discussed this previously on the CEC. Sylvia and Keith and I have, and in my opinion, we're not able to do the kind of technical analysis on this list of what it's about 30 items here. And I'm not saying that these are bad ideas. I'm sure some really good ideas in there, but I don't think it's realistic for our council to try to dive in and analyze this. One, we don't have staff, and less staff, CEC, CEO office staff will do this to do detailed analysis. And I think that if the staff were to recommend to us that we recommend on to the board that we adopt one of these as a recommendation, that should be the way that it's handled, rather than say, okay, here's your to-do list, analyze these and tell us which ones you think we should be doing. So I think that we need to step back and think of the big picture. What does the board want from us? They want recommendations on what they should be doing. In my mind, there's one thing that is still missing in the county's climate action effort, and that's a leadership role to lead to the goals that Heather documented on emission reductions over time to meet the counties and the state's emission reduction targets. I just am afraid that we don't have staff in the county who's leading that effort, and that if anything that moving forward we could recommend, in my mind, that would be the most important thing, to recommend to the board to clearly establish that leadership in the county staff, because it's missing now. So I want to say that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from council members?
Yeah, so I think just for the rest, for the new members, I think our intent also for the staff, it was just to give you the history, kind of the steps that were taken before for the new ideas. The tax temporary advisory committees, and kind of with the ideas, and kind of there's also an evaluation criteria. So just giving you a history to kind of bring you to the same level as the rest of the council members. So when you do come up with the ideas, kind of what you did before, do you want to do the same thing? Do you want to do something different? So always welcome to kind of answer questions. What was the history? There's videos that you can welcome to go back and look at the movies, but we can just kind of give you more of the background, and if time allows, we can do some of the investigative, some of the work, just kind of how Victor did a little bit of the inventory of the equipment that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So we're here to kind of help. We wanted to make sure that we gave you that history so you know what's happened before. So, you know, your ideas are welcome, and you can do it. I would replicate. I want to have new ideas. So just kind of anything that any new ideas that you want to bring forward.
So part of the process that we took, because it took us a little bit of time to move forward on these ideas, was we arranged ourselves into these TACs. And there were folks, so we could only serve, I believe, on one. We couldn't go to another because would violate then the Brown Act. And so we identified then the priority ones. They were transportation, agriculture. There was one that dealt with, that Phil was part of, one that dealt with everything else. And over the course of time, these groups then met. They met with staff here at the county, or they worked together in unison. And McPherris was really good about holding our feet to the fire and saying, these are the measurements that we need to come up with if we were to present anything back to this group. And so that's how then the items that you see that came up that were recommended to the board, that were then plugged into planning and then went to the board, they actually came through tax. So that's how we arranged it. We then dissolved the tax last year. And so now possibly there's an opportunity for us to bring a TAC back. And there was question, some other things that had to be floated through our county council to see if that would be, if that violates anything in terms of discussions, et cetera. So we took the process of dissolving them last year. But now I believe that we could actually entertain that kind of process again to get us through to identifying then maybe not just one priority, but several priorities that this commission is going to be looking at over the course of the next couple of years. Because this is our family that we have here in the next couple of years. We've been appointed for this for a 2-year stint. So, and we also then have Heather, who's our main staff person here under the auspices of the department that Alejandra runs. And so we do have a staff person. So these are just, some suggestions for us to chew on and maybe come up with some recommendations, as well as, climate emergency was something that was wrapped up into the general plan for the first time several years ago. So the effort was to focus in on it as part of the general plan and not a separate plan that came up. So we took really big strides to make it happen, but certainly that there are ideas that don't have measurement or quantifiable goals. So that could be our first priority as well, is, of the 27 that aren't quantified, do we want to focus in on those? Or we can cover anything else as well. So it doesn't exclude anything. It may even be an overlay of sorts that we may want to tackle. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I would add to that. Yeah, thank you for that summary. Having been involved in the development of the general plan and the climate action plan, serving on the planning commission 4 years prior to the formation of this group, the county hired a consultant to put together a list of policies and programs that would reduce greenhouse gas emissions and quantified them to the best of their ability. And these are technical consultants. There was a leftover list of things that they either didn't quantify or couldn't quantify, that were kind of passed on to us. In my mind, kind of unfairly, because if the consultant couldn't quantify them, how was anyone thinking that we were going to be able to do that as a volunteer committee? And as Sylvia stated, the TAC setup proved to be cumbersome. We're a Brown Act committee. You can't have you can't have a quorum or more people meeting together without violating the Brown Act. So we do have to comply with that. But the 4 of us, for example, Saeed and Keith and Phil and Sylvia, could meet together and formulate a proposal and not violate the Brown Act. as long as we weren't talking with the rest of the council. Any rate, I think it's a mistake to suggest that we should be focusing on this big lift here, because these are things the consultant couldn't quantify, didn't or couldn't quantify. And I don't think it's realistic to think that we're going to do that if they didn't do it, unless we have county staff, Alejandra and her staff and Heather, helping us pull something together. And instead, I think we really need to think big picture. You know, these 12 supervisors that have been involved in climate action, they're looking to us for recommendations. What should we be doing? And we need to do that.
Good question. I guess just to get like learned up, is there a list of what in the last several years, like this committee has recommended to the board so we can get an idea of what's already been accomplished? And then I guess second question, and forgive me, Heather, if it's in here and I haven't read it yet. And then second question, is there like a short list right now that will be voted on here soon or is being considered?
The six, and yeah, I mentioned them, the 6 actions that the council has taken in the last 2 years: well capping, electrification policy, retrofit, electrification, landscape equipment inventory, an educational program on climate, and a question to the county on how it's doing on purchasing EVs. Those are the 6 actions this council has taken. There's nothing else on the table now. The only one that I have brought forward, and maybe I need to formalize it, is this thing I pointed out, that we need to have defined leadership in county staff for implementing the climate action plan in a way that meets the goals of the climate action plan. So that would be the next thing, the 7th thing that would come forward if I'm the one to do the next thing. Maybe you have a suggestion of something you want to bring, or all of you. I would hope that everybody brings something for it. In the last 2 years, 2 people made proposals to the full council, myself and Dick Baldwin. Dick, like myself, was a former APCD director, very involved in climate. So it's open to everybody, you know, if someone has a good idea, you know, I think bring it to these meetings and propose it.
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to ask about the well capping. I know I mean, that's like a big low hanging fruit, if you may, like in terms of reducing the emission. Is there a way to get update? I mean, I know I'm not that caught up on it. How many active wells are there? What exactly is all this?
I can answer that. The Ventura County is an oil producing county, one of the biggest in the state. There are a lot of abandoned and idle and wells, some of which are leaking methane, and methane is, as you can imagine, much more potent than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. And they really need to be capped, properly capped. It hasn't happened comprehensively in the county. And this council voted to recommend that the board adopt a resolution identifying that problem, acknowledging that problem, and working to get money. The Biden administration and the governor in California have both put forward hundreds of millions of dollars for this effort to attract money into Ventura County to cap wells here. So that was the hope. That still is the hope. And the county CEO's office is working in Sacramento to try to acquire this kind of money for well capping.
So basically what's preventing the county is funding for capping these wells?
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
So you could actually go back to the Climate Emergency Council meeting that we had, because we had presentation, and there was
Got it.
probably more
Very thoughtful.
in there that would answer some questions that you would have. But that was the process, yeah.
The oil and gas industry in the county is a major contributor to the greenhouse gas emissions here. And controlling those emissions, eliminating or controlling them is important.
I have
Yes.
to leave because I have to be in Northridge by 3:30, so
Okay.
I'm not the meeting yet.
Okay.
So is that?
Yeah, so are there any other comments or questions here for the staff? Just receiving an update, but you can contemplate then, what the next actions could be that we would put then on a future agenda. I like the way the tax worked, because we went through a planning meeting in order to come up with these ideas. So we went through very much a structured way to identify them. Clay worked with us immensely. I think we took like 2 special meetings to get through the priorities. We can come back and visit those as well. Just making some suggestions as to how we move forward. All right.
I would be happy to be part of anything like that. I think it's much easier to work on a smaller group and throw crazy ideas than in this formal setting.
It still has to come back to the formal
Right,
setting,
right,
I'm
I know,
sure,
I
but
know.
you can vet the ideas out in
Yeah.
a smaller group, right? Yeah, okay. Did I go to public comments for this? Any public comments here on this item on the agenda? Yes, so we have somebody in the audience here. Go ahead.
Do you prefer to meet any?
It doesn't
specific
matter.
spot?
You can move alongside either this side or this side in order to be on camera.
Do I have your permission to? leave?
Yes, yeah, go ahead. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Look at the panels out hanging out here by the boardroom
Okay,
on climate.
okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you, Councilmember
Sorry
Slade.
about that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, hello. My name is Abra Stewart. I'm the program manager at Climate First, replacing oil and gas, or CBROG. We are an environmental nonprofit that pushes for climate action and fossil fuel-free future in Ventura County. And we've been tracking this council for some time, but we're really concerned with the direction that the Climate Emergency Council has been going in recently. In late 2020, this council was established with the responsibility of making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors regarding the general plan's climate action plan goals. And by our count, there are 151 CAP-related general plan policies, and this council has been tasked with finding ways to implement about 56% of those. Yet, since its inception, only a handful of recommendations have been made by this council and implemented at the county. So we're really in a climate emergency, and we need urgency to be reflected not only in the name of this council, but also in your actions. But the bureaucratic stagnation within this council is only intensifying, specifically with the selection of 2 new at-large members with deep ties to the fossil fuel industry. The industry that's largely to blame for this climate emergency that we find ourselves in. And while these council members are serving as individuals and not representatives of their companies or organizations, the council bylaws specifically require candidates to have a demonstrated special interest, competence, experience, or knowledge in climate action planning. These requirements are typically ones that would be developed through a person's career or training, yet these new council members' career experiences only speak to their demonstrated special interest, competence, experience, and knowledge on how to perpetuate the use of fossil fuels for as long as possible. It's actually crucial and incredibly beneficial to have individuals with deep knowledge of the fossil fuel industry in these conversations about mitigating climate change and strategizing for a carbon-free future. Unfortunately, their presence is less beneficial if they only continue to advocate for greenwash fossil fuel solutions in the face of a climate crisis. Eric Crow, a SoCal Gas employee, has even spoken about renewable natural gas projects. But you only have to research past fossil fuel PR articles to find that renewable gas is no substitute for shifting to clean electrification. The environmental and public health impacts are significant and its productivity is lacking. Poorly yielded attempts to prolong fossil fuel use, combustion, and extraction touted by the fossil fuel industry as renewable are not solutions to the climate crisis locally or globally. And it's outrageous that people who are advocating for the continued use of fossil fuels would be placed on a climate emergency council that was necessitated by a climate emergency directly tied to the fossil fuel industry. It's really disappointing. We're really disappointed. And we encourage you to re-examine the capacity of this council, analyze if members correctly meet the bylaw requirements, and identify what resources are available and which ones are needed to support authentic, swift, and bold climate action. You all are responsible for, ensuring that the community-driven policies included in the general plan bring greenhouse gas emissions down 41% by 2030. And that's only 7 years away. So we need to do better, and we need you to do better and fast. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with public comment here? No, seeing none. Let's go to the screen to see if anybody else. So I do see Jan, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was well said earlier to really reflect the state of emergency that we're in. Ron Whitehurst here and I specialize in agroecology and sustainable agriculture practices, and we do try to follow the APAC and the programs that were put under the responsibility of the Ag Commission. And we would like to volunteer to any of the members that want to reform a team looking at mitigation of ag-related greenhouse gases. We do have quite a lot of expertise on that, and we follow the policies and the grant resources of both the state and the USDA. So we have a lot of background in it. We really want to see partly what I found is that the Ag Commission has tried to implement and say they have implemented a couple of the programs in the ag element, and it's not impressive. So we need to visit what the county says it has done among climate action programs, and then also look at what new programs the council can recommend to the board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else then on screen that has any comments on this item? All right, so seeing none, then let's move on to item number 13 as we wrap up this meeting. Any comments and future agenda items from this council? Yes, so go ahead, Councilmember Corolla.
So the Central Coast sustainability presentation I thought was really good, and it got me thinking that I know that there's a lot of, or most of the cities in the county have their own climate action working group, and I would really like to see what they've progressed to. Some have been in existence longer in this group, and I just like to see how they're working and some of the topics they're covering, and some of the goals that they have. Maybe we can do an invite of all the different cities that have their climate action committees, just for a quick brief out. So one of the things that tied to that also is if we're working as a county together, I think it's going to be much better than if we're fragmented in our efforts. I know that we're limited to just the county jurisdiction. I understand that, but it doesn't mean that we can't work collaboratively on efforts to make this a county-wide effort to reduce the greenhouse gases. So
And find those best practices also.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Vice Chair White.
It's a great idea, Keith. And in fact, it's part of the climate action plan that the county shall coordinate with the cities on climate action planning. I don't know to the extent that that's happened so much, but it's very important to do that. I do want to comment on one of the things that the CPROG representative said, a criticism of our group here. And it had to do with the implementation of the climate action plan. And while we can recommend policies and programs to the board, we don't do implementation. You know, that's county staff implements what the board adopts. That's Heather and Alejandra and the rest of them and all the departments to implement what the board has already done. We're not going to do any implementing. We don't have that power, even though the words say implementation. It's really, we're giving advice on planning and implementation, but we're not implementing.
Anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, my voice is kind of.
Roster.
So just a comment and a suggestion. So as you mentioned before, Vice Chair White, about the stabilization or leadership of this council, I strongly believe that we should create a working group. So I invite anyone to join my working group if anyone's interested, to not violate the Brown Act, of course. In order to stabilize and focus the importance of this council and to create actual change. As a newcomer, I am fairly new, as you may know. So yes, I would like to stabilize and focus this council in environmental injustice, sustainability, funding, of course. I know an applicant, R.L. Miller, who wanted to be an at-large member. I know I've spoken with her, I connected with her before, as well as Aaron, who's the ecologist that also applied here for the at-large member, who have passions with joining this and as a public member as well, to, I guess, well, Aaron will be presenting in the next meeting about sea level rise under my name, and to make sure that we learn what the CAP is, so what the climate action plan is, the importance of it, and to make sure that we held each other accountable for that as well. Another last announcement that I would like to make is that as the appointee for Supervisor Lopez for District 5, I was invited to the roundtable that's tomorrow. I believe you may, yeah. So I'm going to attend that roundtable as I attended last month, I believe. So if anyone is interested in being in that roundtable, please feel free to email me. Yeah.
What is that roundtable about?
So the roundtable, I only have attended one, but from what I understand, it's a group to exchange ideas with each other, with nonprofit organizations, with Supervisor Lopez. And so Supervisor Lopez is there to kind of listen to all of those organizations. And I think it's open to the public. You can also add in if you would like. But yeah, that's pretty much it, to learn about the importance of the climate change in Ventura County and what's going on currently with the policies.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other comments? Future agenda items? Okay. So let's see.
A future agenda item?
Yes.
That we have a discussion about what I talked about earlier, and that's who's the leader in Ventura County government for developing the climate action plan to meet the goals of the county.
All right. Let's see. So with that, let's go to, did I go to public comments for this item number 13 yet? I don't know if I.
You have not.
Yeah, I haven't. Okay, so any members of the public who want to speak on this item number 13, future agenda items? Seeing none in the public here present, and doesn't look like
from
anyone.
a previous item as well, so.
Yeah, so the chat is from a previous item, correct?
Yes.
So anyone else? I don't see anyone raising their hand on screen. Okay. So with that, then let's go ahead and adjourn to the next meeting. And we are scheduled for May 30th here at noon at the Hall of Administration, County of Ventura. Thank you, everyone, for a good meeting.
Good job, Sylvia. And everybody, if you get a chance, check out in the